Starting off our supplies, we need a set of beads. We are going to be using 22 gauge brass wire to secure the beads onto the ring. And then we are going to be using a 18 gauge solid brass wire to make the ring itself. And then we will need a mandrel in the ring size of your choice. We will be using nylon jaw pliers, a pair of wire cutters, then we have our chain nose pliers as well as round nose pliers. To begin the ring, we are just going to smooth out the wire with our nylon jaw pliers, and then we are going to create a loop at the end of the wire that is able to fit this bead inside of it. Placing the bead next to the jaw of the pliers, we can see where we need to place the wire into the pliers to create a loop that is big enough to fit the bead inside of it. Once we've bent the wire and finished the loop, we're going to double check to make sure that the bead fits inside of it. If the bead doesn't fit, simply straighten out the wire and rebend the loop so that it is the size you need. With our first loop created, we are then going to place the wire onto the ring mandrel and begin shaping the ring. Holding the wire securely on the ring mandrel, we will then take that long end of wire and wrap it around. We're going to wrap the wire around the mandrel completely one time and then bring it around again so that long end of the wire is to the front of the ring mandrel at the same side as the first loop. Now that we have created the band of the ring, we are going to create a second loop in the wire. When bending the wire to create this loop, we want to bend it in the opposite direction of the first one. Make sure that you are holding that wire securely on the ring mandrel so that it doesn't shift around when you are making your measurement for where you need to begin creating the bend for the second loop. The size of bead that you are using will determine where you need to hold the wire as you begin creating your second loop. I need loops that are equal size because I chose two equally sized beads. You could totally customize this design and use different sized beads on each end of the wire. Once we have finished creating the second loop, we are going to trim off the excess wire by cutting it on the inside of the circle. Now that we have created the ring itself, we are going to begin attaching the beads. Using the 22 gauge wire, and I have this scrap here that I'm going to be using because we just need a small piece. We are going to wrap the wire on either side of the loop. So placing the 22 gauge wire into the loop, we're going to wrap that short end of wire all the way around. Because we are working with such a short piece of wire, we are going to use our chain nose pliers to help secure that wire onto the ring. Secure one end of the 22 gauge wire onto one side of the loop. I wrapped mine about 2 or 3 times around and then secured the end with the chain nose pliers. Now we can add the bead onto the wire. Bringing the bead into the center of the circle, we are then going to secure the other end of the wire onto the loop. Thread the wire up through the loop, tightening this smaller wire on the larger wire and wrapping it around until you have as many wraps on this side as you did on the first side. We are working with a small space here in between the bead and the edge of the loop, so it's going to take a little bit to work that smaller wire up and around through that space so that we can securely wrap it and secure it onto the ring. Using both our hands and the chain nose pliers, we can wrap this wire and tighten it securely. Once we have finished wrapping the wire and this second end matches the first, we are then going to take our wire cutters and clip off the extra wire. And then using the chain nose pliers again, we will secure that end against the loop. With the first bead attached, we can now add the second bead in the same manner. Threading the smaller 22 gauge wire up through the loop, we will then wrap it around tightly and secure it onto the circle. Create this wrap so that it matches the other side of the ring where we attached the first bead. Once we have secured the first end of wire onto the loop, we can then add our bead and then finish securing it onto the circle. Threading the wire up through the loop and then wrapping it as many times as we need to match the other side. Again, going between using our hands and the chain nose pliers, we can secure this wire and wrap it tightly against the ring. Once we have finished wrapping this end of the wire, we can then take the wire cutters and clip off the extra wire. Trimming it closely, we will then use the chain nose pliers to finish tightening down the end. Once we have finished attaching the beads, we'll place it back on the ring mandrel to check and resize if necessary. And now you have finished the swirl ring, which is completely adjustable. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I also hope to see you in the next video.